Thank you very much, Senator Harkin, and Mr. Duncan. Thanks so much for coming in the other day. I enjoyed our conversation, and thanks for the work you've done in Chicago. Let me start off by making this point and asking you to comment on it. We talk a lot about wasting money in government, and one of the ways we waste money is by not putting funds into prevention, allowing situations to deteriorate, whether it's in healthcare and education or many other areas. In America today, Mr. Duncan, as you probably know, 18% of our children live in poverty, and that is by far the highest rate of poverty for children of any country, major country on earth. Meanwhile, the other side of that equation is we have more people in jail than any country on earth, including China. Amazing fact. In your judgment, is there a correlation between the high rate of childhood poverty and the fact that so many kids drop out of school, intellectually drop out by the time they're 8, do drugs, do crime, do self-destructive activity, and we end up spending $50,000 a year keeping them in jail rather than investing in education, rather than investing in childcare? Part of that question, what are you going to do to deal with the disaster in terms of childcare and early childhood education so that in Vermont and all over this country, working families today, at the most important moment in a child's life, cannot find high-quality, affordable childcare?
Yeah, well, as the president-elect has talked about repeatedly, and he has a huge passion and commitment around this, he totally understands, totally gets the fact that the best thing we can do for children is give them quality, give them access to high-quality early childhood programs. And so the more we're getting to our young children before they hit kindergarten, the more this is not glorified babysitting, but really getting their early literacy skills, their early socialization skills intact so they hit kindergarten ready to read and ready to learn, the better our students are going to do. As a country, if we can invest more in education and less in jail cells, I think that's absolutely what we all have to be thinking about.
Specifically with regard to childcare, do you agree that our current early childhood education situation is totally inadequate? And what can you tell us will happen in the next 4 years?
Well, again, as the president-elect has said repeatedly, he wants to increase not just the quality, but access to early childhood education. I will tell you, in Chicago, we've each year increased by 1,000 to 1,500 seats the number of children able to go into high-quality programs for 3- and 4-year-olds. And so that's the kind of thing the president, again, has from day one, reiterated his tremendous commitment to improving both the quality and the access around the country.
Would you agree that our goal should be that every parent in this country should be able to find access to high-quality, affordable childcare?
I think we have to move towards that opportunity to universal access. Again, the more we're getting to our children early, the better they're going to do.
In terms of prevention and protecting people's well-being and saving money, I know Senator Harkin has been a leader on this. In terms of health care, primary health care, I know in Vermont we're beginning to have a little bit of success with dental facilities in schools, health care facilities. So there's the idea of bringing health care into the schools so that we can detect kids' problems early on. Makes sense to you?
But this is a larger point, and I touched upon earlier in my statement that I think the more our schools become community centers, the more they become centers of community and family life, the better our children can do. So the days in which schools being open 6 hours a day and the child goes home for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at 2:30 with mom at home, that doesn't work for two-parent working families. That doesn't work for single moms working 2 and 3 jobs. That doesn't work for, in Chicago, 9,000 homeless children.
And it certainly doesn't work in Vermont. The world has changed, and we have not recognized that anymore.
The more we're creative in thinking about how our schools are open, not 6 hours, but 12 hours, and Saturdays and over the summer, the more we're co-locating services, GED, ESL, healthcare clinics, the more those schools become the centers of community life, the better our children are going to do.
I know that President-elect Obama has been very strong on this issue, and I am, and I'm sure many other members of this committee are, and that's the concept of expanded education, to make it clear that after-school programs should be available, that Saturday programs should be available, that summer programs should be available, so kids, especially lower-income kids, don't lose what they have learned. Does that make sense to you?
It's been a huge fight and passion of mine in Chicago, and that many of the opportunities I had going to a great private school in Chicago, the things that were the norm for me, chance to, whether it's arts enrichment or cultural enrichment or debate or Model UN or chess, those things are somehow seen as extra not important for public school children. And so we've fought very, very hard to dramatically increase, whether it's during the school day or again during the non-school hours, to give every child the opportunity to develop their skills, to develop their unique interests and talent, and give them reason to be motivated to come to school every single day. And again, maybe it's the chess team, maybe it's debate, maybe it's yearbook, and we want every child to have those kinds of opportunities to grow their unique skills and interests.
Well, Mr. Duncan, I certainly going to very strongly support your nomination, and I look forward to working with you. And you have just an enormous responsibility on your shoulders, because we have not done well by the kids of this country, and there's so much to be done, and I look forward to working with you to make those changes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Senator Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Arnie, welcome. My apologies for my tardiness. I was downstairs with the President's nominee for Energy.
You got a few things going on.
Clearly, I, in one morning, had the two smartest nominees that the President has made, in you and Dr. Chu, and that makes it challenging. More importantly, when Tom Coburn was asking his questions and you answered, I realized that competitive bidding is something that's not unfamiliar in Illinois, is it?
I apologize on behalf of my state.
First question, most important. Did you watch the Wake Carolina game on Sunday night?
I didn't, but I saw the results. Yeah.
For a guy that takes great pride in having close games against Duke, I think it would stimulate you greatly to see Carolina get beat. It was a good game. I was going to ask you about FAFSA, but you're on the record. We need to change it. This is insane. So let me go to a couple other areas if I can. The U.S. is now the only industrialized nation in the world where a kid has a lesser chance of graduating from high school than their parents did. Last year in the United States, we graduated 70% of our 9th through 12th graders on time. Mm-hmm. In my state of North Carolina, it's 69%. If you're African American, it's 55%. If you're Latino, it's 52%. Some studies suggest that if you take the 12 largest metropolitan areas in the country, that the high water mark for African American graduation, 9th through 12th on time, is 25%. That's what's fueling the prison construction, the prison cost, welfare payments that are increasing, food stamp payments that are increasing, because today's 21st century economy requires a minimum of a high school diploma, not to be able to fill out an application, but to be invited for an interview. So we're fooling ourselves if we believe that as a country we can sit here with a 70% graduation rate from high school on time, and that 30% of our kids are going to have the tools to compete. It's not going to happen. So I know from the conversation you and I have had that you get it. And as Secretary of Education, what are you going to do to try to change that?
A couple quick comments, and this is a huge issue. And I think what you've seen is the United States hasn't as much fallen behind as other countries have passed us. Other countries have taken this much more seriously, and whether you look at high school graduation rates or college graduation rates, we've been sort of stagnant or dropped a bit. Others are really soaring, so that's not a good thing. From again, from an economic standpoint, from a human standpoint, we have to do something dramatically better. A couple thoughts. Despite those very, very sobering statistics that are real and that present huge challenges, we today have examples, not in Chicago, not just in Chicago, but around the country, of extraordinary schools in the heart of our toughest communities where 95% of students are graduating, where the overwhelming majority are going to college, and guess what? Graduating from college. And so I see, and these examples, frankly, are new probably in the last 10 years, 10 to 15 years. And I want to push very hard to scale up what works, to continue to innovate. We don't have to look overseas for great examples. We can learn something there, but we have them in our backyards across this country today. And so we have a chance to take to scale those things that are making a difference in students' lives, and there's a set of extraordinary schools and programs that are doing that every single day. Secondly, I think we have to continue to shine a spotlight on this dropout issue, and I intend to do that, and tell the story, the good, the bad, the ugly, and unfortunately it's not something any of us can be proud of. I'm proud that we've seen 7 years of reductions in the dropout rate in Chicago, but it is still unacceptably high, and we have to, as a country, challenge ourselves to change those numbers pretty significantly. I would argue that while third grade test scores are important, and that's how many of us were measured. If my third grade test scores are fantastic and my dropout rates are too high, I'm not helping my students be successful, and I'm not changing their lives. And so in as many ways as I can, both from the bully pulpit as well as strategically, I want to shine a spotlight on this and see if we can reverse those trends significantly. Final thing I'll say, and you know this so well, is that if we're serious about reducing the dropout rate, we can't wait till 11th or 12th grade. Those kids are gone. They're on the streets. And so we've had a huge push on dramatically changing what happens between 8th and 9th grade. That 9th grade year is so critical to us, and so we have to stem this problem before it begins, and I'm committed to trying to do that.
You mentioned college graduation, the success from that 95. Every year, more than 1 million full-time, first-time degree-seeking students start college. Yet fewer than 40% of those students pick up their degree in 4 years. And barely 60% pick up their degree in 6 years. My question is going to be sort of strange to you. How long should the federal government be obligated to extend Pell to a full-time student who can't find a way to graduate? Currently, we extend Pell for 18 months. That if that were extended to, 18 semesters, if that were extrapolated for a full-time student, that would mean that they could stay in 9 years and we would still be subsidizing what most students achieve or try to achieve in 4 years. Do we need to rethink this?
That's a good question that I don't know the answer to and need to take a look at it. I will say a couple things. I think, again, we have to really think about how we try to dramatically increase the high school graduation rate and the college graduation rate. I absolutely recognize that there are many students, particularly who might be 22, 23, coming back to school to be retrained and to get those skills they need to enter the workforce today. And there are many folks that need to work part-time and maybe raise a family and might, again, be a single mom who's taking classes in the evening and trying to make ends meet. And I want to do everything we can to support those. So I don't have a concrete answer to your, should there be a final cutoff at the end of the day. But for young people who are trying to go to the next level and see going back to school as a way to do that, I want to be supportive of those efforts.
Well, I hope for those that are shocked by the 70% graduation rate in high school, that they're even more shocked today to hear that barely 60% of our higher education students graduate in 6 years.
Yeah.
I think that should be shocking to most of us. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, could I indulge you for one more question, since it's just you and me and the senator from Vermont? You and I talked last week about attracting the best and the brightest teachers in our classroom. Especially as it relates to low-income, underperforming schools, how crucial that is to the success of that school and to the students. In North Carolina, 3 school systems, Guilford, Charlotte, Mecklenburg, Cumberland, have gone to a pay-for-performance model. You did that in Chicago. They've been successful at the attraction of talent. You were successful and continue to be at the attraction of talent. What can you do as secretary to help put pay for performance in the game for more systems? And is that one of the models that we should try to increase the ability for systems that are failing to get the teachers they need?
Yeah, I think the challenge of getting great talent into the communities that need it most is a huge one, but let me tell you, it's one of the areas where I'm frankly most optimistic, because I've seen every day extraordinary talent walk away from other jobs, other professions, other opportunities because they're so committed to these children, these communities, and they want to make a difference. So we have to find a whole host of ways to support that great talent to go where it needs. I said earlier, one of the things that most helped us, that I really want to commend Secretary Spellings for, was a teacher incentive fund. And they through the Department of Education, created a significant fund that was of great benefit to us in Chicago and other places. And that's something that I want to, look to not just support, but, potentially increase. And I think that's a piece of it. We want to reward excellence. You want to, get great folks working where you want them and where you need them the most. We talked earlier about creating real career ladders and leadership opportunities for teachers to stay there. But I think we can't do enough to reward and recognize and incent excellence and get the best and brightest working in communities where historically great talent has fled. Historically, there's been an out-migration of that talent. We have to find ways to reverse that and bring those folks in. I know we can do it. I've seen it happen. I want to work very hard in that area.
Well, let me thank you for your comments today. More importantly, let me thank you and your family for your willingness to do what you're doing. Mr. Chairman, it's important that I point out this is not only a guy that gets it, he gets better as time goes on. As a sophomore, he fouled out of the Duke game. As a junior, he scored 20 points and was instrumental in almost pulling off a victory. And I think this is a talent we need to expeditiously get in place. I encourage the chair to move it quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Burr. I'm just making some notes here, Mr. Duncan, on talking about teacher quality and enticing teachers and getting the best teachers. I'm sure you must be familiar with Wendy Kopp and Teach for America. Many of those, I forget the percentage, but a high percentage of those students that graduate and that come in to Teach for America eventually stay in teaching. And all of the data that I have seen indicates that they have become very excellent teachers. And yet we don't put much money into it. I asked for the figure. I fund it through our Appropriations Committee at the level of $14 million for a year. They could use a substantial amount more than that. Give me your thoughts on Teach for America and how it might also help provide quality teachers.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. And I think I'm a huge fan of Wendy's. Let me just start there. And I think there's a generation of what I call education entrepreneurs who are really helping to change the face of education. Wendy Kopp is one of them. John Schnoor is here today, who runs New Leaders for New Schools, which trains great principals to go into communities that have been underserved. And we've had a great partnership with Teach for America in Chicago. Actually, I worked on that before I got this job when I was working for the previous CEO, Paul Valls. I helped to bring Teach for America to Chicago. And they've done an extraordinary job, again, of bringing the best and brightest from around the country into teaching. Many stay. What's been interesting to me is, and what I didn't fully appreciate or understand early on, was that not only are there great teachers coming through the program, but it's a great pipeline of talent. Many of the new schools that we've opened, a disproportionate percent of the principals who are running those schools are Teach for America alumni. And so you get these people with this great vision and this entrepreneurial spirit and a willingness to innovate. The leader of my curriculum for all of my high schools, for 110 high schools, is a Teach for America alumni. We have many Teach for America alumni within my management team. And so, yes, they produce great teachers. But programs like that bring talent into our field where we desperately need that kind of talent. So I want to support, there's a whole generation that, again, Wendy Kopp and John Schnoor and others represent, who I think are changing the face of public education. I want to do everything I can to support their efforts. And again, if something's working, we need to scale it up and do a lot more of it and do it as fast as we can.
There's another program called Follow the Leaders program, but I'll talk to you about that.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that one. Yeah.
We have it in Iowa and a few other states, and we've been funding it, and all the indications are that it's been a great success. But we'll look at that more later on. But I'm glad that you're supportive of Teach for America, even though Wendy went to a different school than you did. I'm glad you're not holding it against her. She went to Princeton, right? You're not holding it against any.
I could care less about any of that.
Mr. Rogers here will keep you on track on Princeton kids, right? Two other things, just for the record. We talked in the office about kids with disabilities. It came up again, and you know about the 1% and the 2% rule. Yeah. It has the effect right now of just cutting out 30% of kids with disabilities and saying we don't even have to account for them. Right. As I said to you in the office, that would be like saying to any minority group, right. 30% of you just don't count. We wouldn't do that for African Americans or Latinos or anybody else. Right. And so I hope that you will take a look at that 2% rule and give us some suggestions on a new policy that would be more supportive of kids with disabilities.
I absolutely commit to you to doing that, and I philosophically absolutely agree with directionally where you want to go on this.
I have two other areas. One of the one of the results of No Child Left Behind that I have seen in Iowa and other states that I visited, and I hear it a lot, is that because of the testing requirements for reading and math, that one of the first teachers to go because of the lack of funding is usually the art teacher or the music teacher, and of course the phys ed teacher. Those are the first ones to go. And here we are, and I want to just focus on the physical education part of it. Right now, 10 million young people are considered overweight. According to the Department of Health and Human Services, by 2010, 20% of children and youth will be obese. And yet, less than 10% of our schools are providing physical exercise every day to the kids. Less than 10%, 1 out of 10. Or its equivalent for the entire school year. Almost a quarter of all schools do not require students to take any physical education at all. I use a quote from actually it was a principal, I have to say. I shouldn't point out the city, but it's on the record. It was in Atlanta. A principal said that in response to the fact that they had built an elementary school without a playground, and his response was, we're in the business of educating kids, not letting them play on monkey bars. Very short-sighted, very short-sighted. And so again, in this time frame, when I was a kid, I mean, not only did we have 15 minutes in the morning and 15 in the afternoon and a half-hour lunch, we did an hour a day of physical education, not education, physical exercise. I want to get away from physical education, physical exercise. But then when we went home in the evening, we played pickup basketball, we played sandlot baseball, we didn't have TV and things like that. We didn't have Nintendos and those kind of games. So today, when kids are less active after school and they're doing more on Nintendo games and talking together on their Facebooks and things, we don't even do anything in school for these kids. And so I have co-sponsored legislation, the Fit Kids Act. I don't even get into that, but somehow, we need your leadership to start prodding schools to build in physical exercise every single day for these kids. Now, the other part of that equation is what they eat. Now, I wear another hat as chairman of the Agriculture Committee, as you know, and this year is the reauthorization of the Child Nutrition Bill. We've got to get better food to our kids in school for their breakfast and for their lunches and for their snacks. That's half of it. The other half is we've got to get them exercising, too, during the day. And so I look to you. You told me your wife is a physical education teacher and an athletic director at a K-12 school, so I'm really glad you have someone close to you that will talk to you about the need for physical exercise for our kids in school. And I know about your own background, too, so I know that you also keep physically fit. So would you just address yourself a little bit to this lack of physical exercise for kids, especially in elementary school?
Sure, and my wife will absolutely keep me on the straight and narrow on this one. But it's a huge issue you bring up, and there aren't easy answers. But the more we instill in our children early in life these habits that will last them a lifetime, the better they're going to do. And so we've tried to do what we can to expand those opportunities before school, during the school day, after school. We've had great nonprofit partners who have helped us do that in Chicago and running programs. We had a group of our high school students actually run the Chicago Marathon. And when students are exposed to those kinds of opportunities, it's going to change them for the rest of their life. And so we have to find ways to do this. I will just say personally, I was lucky to go to school where I had PE 4 days a week in recess, and I was one of those young boys that would have had a very hard time sitting through a full day of school and would have been tougher on my teachers. And so again, just from a personal standpoint, I know how critically important it is to have those breaks and have a chance to get up and run around a little bit. But again, I worry a lot about the sedentary nature of so many of our young people today, as you said, not just during the school day, but after school. Mm-hmm. And the more we can, from the earliest ages, build habits, and again, the kids love this. This is fun. They like to eat healthy. They like to get out and run around and play. These aren't, none of the stuff we've done has been mandated. Kids are looking for these kinds of opportunities. So we need to be creative. We need to think about the use of time. We need to think about great nonprofit partners who can come in and provide these kinds of opportunities. And I would argue, frankly, that at the end of the day, this is going to help us a lot academically. This doesn't take away from our core mission. This is central to that core mission. And so I want to find ways to be creative and think it through and see if we can expand significantly over time the number of young people with these kinds of opportunities that will shape them until the day they die.
As I've said many times to Secretary Spellings, both in open meetings and in meetings in my office, no child left behind ought to mean we're not leaving them behind in their health either. And that had to be just part and parcel, no child left behind. And so how we build that into the structure to meet certain goals. I mean, if we're going to meet certain goals and testing on reading and math, why shouldn't we have certain goals in terms of their body mass index, their exercise, their heart rates, their obesity index, all those kinds of things that we can build in?
Yeah.
That had to be a part of it, I would think.
Yeah. No, again, this has just been so hugely important to me and my wife and to our family, and I fully intend to look at this very seriously.
Thank you very much, Mr. Duncan. I see that another great leader on child nutrition is also here, Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to work with you on the childhood nutrition and your comments about just the physical health of our children and share your comments. Mr. Duncan, it's a pleasure to meet you. We haven't had an opportunity to speak one-on-one. I look forward to that. But I will tell you, my first impressions of you are very strong and very favorable. You've got a beautiful family behind you. I am quite pleased that your young son is sitting there reading books instead of amusing himself with the latest electronic gadget. As a mom of 2 boys, I know that it's tough to kind of keep them in their seats, but you're doing right. Welcome your wife, and if you ever have any questions about what we need to be doing in our schools and to engage our kids, don't forget to ask your own. I'm always asking for input from my boys and learning a lot. My first request to you is a big one, and I do have high hopes that you will fulfill it. I extended an invitation to both Secretary Page when he was Secretary of Education and Secretary Spellings when she was Secretary of Education to come to Alaska to see some of our challenges as they relate to how we are able to educate children in a state that is as vast and as broad as it is. Secretary Page, as we were traveling across the state, this was at a time when Alaska was trying to get an exemption from the provision that said if you fail to meet AYP, you have to send your kids to the next closest school. Well, that school that we flew to from Nome to Savunga was the same distance as between Washington, D.C. and New York City. And as we were flying over the ocean, looking down over the icebergs, he's very quiet, and he says to me, he says, I thought I knew what rural was. He says, I'm getting a different picture. We would like to show you a different picture in Alaska, not only of our challenges, but how we have been very creative in our use of teleeducation and distance learning, and how we're able to meet some of our challenges. So that's my first ask to you, and I would welcome your family to join you in that. I think it would be a real eye-opener. Kids will show you some bears and some other things like that might make it more interesting. I do want to make sure that you are aware of some of the challenges that our Alaska Natives deal with. One of the things that we've learned from No Child Left Behind that has been made more clear with the statistics is our education statistics are not anything to be proud of as they relate to our Alaska Natives in terms of achievement, dropout rates, college enrollment. The gaps are wide and they are unacceptable, and we are working aggressively to deal with it. You know that the federal government has a trust responsibility with relationship to our Alaska Native tribes, but we don't have a Bureau of Indian Affairs schools or fundings to address that. So what Congress had authorized was the Alaska Native Educational Equity Act. And this act provides funding for programs like the remedial and gifted education, dropout prevention, community engagement, a whole variety, curriculum development, teacher training and recruitment. The competitive grants that are funded under this program, we believe, are making a difference, but they are still very, very necessary to ensure that Alaska Native children have educational equity with their non-Native peers across the country. So I use this time to make sure you are aware of it and to ask for your commitment to work with us to ensure that we do have continued funding for these programs.
I appreciate your comments, and I've never been to Alaska, and I would absolutely take you up on the offer
Wonderful,
to go there.
thank
and,
you.
My daughter's favorite animal is a polar bear. She's a polar bear nut, so we could see some
You don't
polar
want to get
bears.
too close to those guys.
But you and a number of other senators have been really courteous and offered me the chance to come out and visit some schools with you. And I need to get out. I need to listen. I need to learn. There's a whole lot I need to continue to comprehend and to figure out. And so I will absolutely take you up on that request. I'd be honored to do it.
Great. The other thing that I would let you know in terms of priorities and things that I am working on in addition to healthy children, I mentioned the dropout rate, the graduation rate. In Alaska, again, our numbers overall, not just with Alaska Native students, but our dropout rate is not acceptable. This is an initiative that I am taking on and looking to work with several of my colleagues, but I want to know that we can work with you on this. I know that Senator Burr had mentioned it to you. I know it has been an initiative of Senator Obama when he was in the Senate, and I'm just looking for your commitment to work with you on what I feel is a very, very important area.
It's a huge issue, and I don't think there's a state in this country that could be really, really proud of that number. And as a country, I don't think we can be proud of what that number is today. So it's something that I need to have a laser-like focus on. This is, complex in many factors, but I want to spend a lot of time figuring out how we dramatically increase the graduation rate. Obviously not overnight, but over time. And when our children drop out today, as you well know, we basically condemn them to social failure. There are no good jobs out there today with a 9th grade, 10th grade education. It just doesn't exist. And to take 1 minute on this, I've often said in Chicago that if you go back 30 years ago, there was an acceptable dropout rate. You could drop out and go work in the stockyards and steel mills, and you could support a family and own your own home and do okay. As we know, that's a distant memory from a bygone era, and that we have to work collectively to be creative, to be thoughtful, to innovate, and to try and, over time, significantly change those numbers, which I think, frankly, none of us can be really proud of today.
Well, I appreciate that statement. I think we recognize that it's not just some decision in senior year of high school that a young man or woman decides, I'm done with this, I'm out of here. These decisions or these thoughts come about much, much earlier in middle school. And one thing that I would like to have an opportunity to chat with you about in the future, we've put a great deal of focus with No Child Left Behind on the early years and giving those basics. Now we're looking at the high school end and making sure that we've taken care of our students there. But I just got through the middle school years, thank goodness, with my sons. We don't put the focus on those ages when kids are either checking in or checking out. And we can't have a gap in any part of this educational system where it's kind of okay for you to slough. It's kind of okay to not have that incentive there to perform well. I don't want our kids in those middle school years when adolescence is hitting them and all kinds of things are coming at them to say, well, education is just not a priority for me now. So I would hope that that would be an area that we would also be able to work together and focus on.
Yeah, no, again, I just appreciate your thoughtful comments, and I'm a big fan of Jeffrey Canada, who runs the Harlem Children's Zone in New York, and he was asked a question. I was on a panel with him recently, and people were saying, is it early childhood, is it high school, is it middle school? And he said, it's all important. And it's complex, but that's the truth, that we have to start early, we have to stay with kids all the way through, and it makes the job harder, it's more comprehensive, it's more complex, but as the absolute truth. And we have to have a continuum from birth to, whatever it is, 22, 23, 24, 25, whatever it might be, of real opportunities, of real high expectations, and really driving students to be successful. And if we think there's a magic bullet at one point, we're really kidding ourselves. It is not that simplistic. I wish there was a magic bullet. Our lives would be a lot easier. As you know, as a parent, it's just not that simple. And we have to have this continuum of opportunity and high expectations all the way through, and continue to challenge kids every single day.
Well, Mr. Duncan, I appreciate your comments. Certainly like what I hear, and we'll look forward to working with you. And again, we'll welcome you to Alaska when that time is appropriate.
Thank you so much. That'd be an extraordinary opportunity.
Look forward to it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The only advice I have, Mr. Duncan, is go there in the summertime. Thank you, Senator Murkowski.
I'll plan it well.
Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Senator Harkin. And Mr. Duncan, I know you have been to Vermont, and we don't have polar bears, but we'd love to welcome you to our state, because there are a whole lot of educators there who have a lot to say. We'd love to. Yeah. Summertime is also a good time. I would be remiss if I didn't touch on higher education, because my wife is the president of a small college. And I think your point about looking at our problems as a continuum are absolutely right. There is no magic bullet anywhere along the line. But I think one thing that happens is if young people in elementary school or middle school or high school get the feeling they're never going to make it to college, they kind of drop out intellectually and do self-destructive activities. Now, I don't have to tell you, because you know it better than I do, that we have a crisis in terms of the affordability and access to college in America today. We have hundreds of thousands of qualified young people who have given up on the dream. Equally alarming is the fact that millions of young people will leave school $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in debt. Graduate school, $100,000 in debt. And they carry that burden on their shoulders for many, many years. And it also heavily influences their choice of careers. I want, Senator Harkin wants, the best people in this country to go and become a teacher or a child care worker. Well, they ain't going to do that if you leave school with a $50,000 debt. Last couple of years, we've begun to make some progress, little progress, but nowhere near enough. We passed a debt forgiveness proposal which says that if you go into teaching, for example, after 10 years of work in a nonprofit organization, your debt will be forgiven. Well, 10 years is a long time. Can you give us some specificity as to how we can make college opportunity more affordable for the young people of America, so that more of them can go to college and so that more of them will not leave college with these very oppressive debts?
And as you well know, the President-elect is just passionate and absolutely committed on this. So he's set a real goal for us of increasing the Pell Grant amounts. He's set a goal of passing the American Opportunity Tax Credit. He's talked a lot about loan forgiveness for folks that want to go into teaching and go into other professions. I think what's been so appealing to me about his vision, it's really to me this idea of reciprocity or mutual responsibility, that we're going to give you these opportunities, but also expect something to, you to come back to the community and help out. I think that spirit is so important. And so I think there are some very significant ways going forward that we can work together with you, with the President-elect, to increase access, to increase affordability, and to your point, Senator, to make sure that those folks that want to, who would prefer to teach and not go to Wall Street, that they not be compelled to go in a different direction because of their loan obligations. And I remembered well the conversation with your staffer, who's facing very, very significant loan challenges.
Yes, she is. Yeah. She's still facing those obligations.
Yeah. And we want to get the best and brightest to come into these fields, and we need to find ways to make it possible for them to chase their dreams.
Well, thank you very much for that, I think, excellent answer. But on a very specific issue, there is the work-study program in college, and most of the money, as we discussed in my office, which I just recently learned as well, goes to on-campus activity, working in the library, working in the cafeteria. Do you think we could take a look at expanding that so that students get work-study money, working as a mentor in a public school or a child care center.
Yeah, no, that was a great point, and that's an area where I need to really learn more, and that was the first time I had heard that, was talking to you. And as I talked earlier, we have hundreds and hundreds of college students, probably thousands, who are in our schools every single day in Chicago. My mother's inner-city tutoring program has been staffed for years and years by phenomenal talent from the University of Chicago and others, and it's been sort of a lifeblood of her program. And so I need to better understand the facts and the challenges and what needs to happen there. But again, philosophically, if you could get more students these kinds of opportunities, I think the benefits for our children around the country would be great. But I think very importantly, when our college students get exposed to the possibilities of teaching, the possibilities of working in community centers and healthcare clinics, that may influence their career choices. And so I think there are lots of benefits there. I want to understand, again, the intricacies of the challenges, but directionally, I love where you're trying to push.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Duncan. And again, what an opportunity you have to transform education and improve the lives of millions of young people, and I'm very excited about the possibility of working with you.
I'm thrilled with the possibility as well. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Duncan, thank you very, very much for being so candid. And again, my thanks for your willingness to take on this task. You have, as you can see, a lot of support here in this committee on both sides of the aisle. I have no doubt that you will be confirmed, I hope unanimously, from this committee and also by the Senate. But you have a big job ahead of you. I don't think there's any secretary whose decisions, whose statements, public posture has more effect on the American people intimately than yours. Maybe Secretary of Health too, maybe, but education affects every family in America. And how we progress as a country, and what we're going to do, and how we're going to maintain our standard of living, our way of life, and provide for equality of opportunity for all our kids really comes down to what kind of education system we have. You know, the Secretary of Defense always gets a lot of publicity and stuff. I've thought about this a lot. The Secretary of Defense and the committees here that fund defense, and I'm on that Appropriations Committee, they're charged with the responsibility of defending America. The Secretary of Education, along with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, they have the task of defining America, who we are and what we are as a people and how we progress and what kind of society we're going to be. And so I look forward to your leadership, as well as your counterpart in Health and Human Services, for taking the leadership in defining America, perhaps better than what we've had in the past. I don't mean just the recent past, I mean just in all of our past, that we redefine America truly as a country where someone like you, coming from your background, can get the kind of education you had, where someone like me, whose mother was an immigrant and whose father was a coal miner, can get to where I am. We're kids of color, and we're kids whose parents are recent immigrants and who have English as a second language, who are struggling to learn the language, where they can also see that America's for them too. I don't mean to be overly heavy on this, but I just, having been here for so many years and serving on both the Appropriations Committee and on this wonderful committee, it just, we really have to do better in education in this country and on Health and Human Services. And so I look upon the two of you as working together. And it is a big job. From what I know of you and from your appearance here this morning, I think you're up to it. And I look forward to working with you and doing all we can to better define America as that land of opportunity for all our kids. So with that, I thank you very much, Mr. Duncan. I thank all of your family for being here. And with that, the record will be kept open for additional questions that may be proffered to you in writing. And we look forward to your early confirmation and swearing in.
Thank you so much. I think this is just an extraordinary opportunity to do something better for our country's children, and I'm amazed by those possibilities. I look forward to working very close with you and your colleagues to make that happen. Thank you.